March 1971, when the large number of lakhs of refugees who came into India from East Pakistan, the current Bangladesh, Mrs. Gandhi, in a cabinet meeting, called the then Chief of Army Staff, later Field Marshal, that time General SHFJ Manekshaw. General Manekshaw went with us to Nigeria to play polo. He was the mentor with us. So this story he told us himself. So he says, Mrs. Prime Minister.
Speaking about combat, does ASC troops and officers cease combat?
Winning the battle without fighting.
That sounds
right. So in case you can choke the enemy by destroying his ammunition, by destroying his supplies, you don't need to fight a war. I was dined in initially into an infantry battalion.
Oh, okay.
Because you do 1 year of attachment.
Yes.
And that battalion was that time located in Gwalior. Later we moved to Arunachal Pradesh, Tanga Valley and that area. So dining is always a social experience, and they try to, if you are the kind who's having a drink, then they make sure that they look after you very well, like Indian hospitality. So it's good fun.
जवाब दिया
अभी मैं नहीं ये ना वैसे तो ये दाढ़ी मेरी धूप में सफेद हुई है, कैसी समझदारी से नहीं है.
जय हिंद एवरीवन, माय नेम इज अंकुर. मैं आपका होस्ट हूँ फ्रॉम द सी सूट क्लब और आज मेरे साथ है लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल बलबीर सिंह, AVSM VSM अति विशिष्ट सेवा मेडल. स्वागत है आपका सर हमारे शो पे.
थैंक यू. आई लुक फॉरवर्ड टू
सर. पहले मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगा, हाउ लॉन्ग डिड यू सर्व इन द आर्मी, द ईयर्स ऑफ टेन्योर्स?
Okay. As a commissioned officer, I served almost 4 decades. And if you add NDA and IMA, that's another 4 years. And if you want to ask me when was I in uniform, from the age of 9, because I was in Sainik school prior to that.
Wow.
So from the age of 9 till 60 in physical uniform. And now you turned so olive green that leaving uniform doesn't make a difference. You're olive green all your life. Yeah.
Wonderful, sir. Sir, you have served in a unit which is an ASC unit. For viewers, I like to put it properly. It's an Army Service Corps. What I've understood so far, and after reading a bit about it, from even knowing from my friends, is what I've understood, that it's a backbone and a support function of an army. You being the DGST in this sector, could you tell me a role? What is an ASC? Before getting into the role, what is an ASC all about?
Okay. Logistics was taught to the corporate world by the military. Because in the earlier days, primarily, there was a barter economy and very localized. It was only the invading armies which had to move hundreds and thousands of kilometers, and they thought of provisioning for that period, and either by carrying it with themselves or how to exploit the local resources. So this is exactly what ASC does for the Indian Army and for the military. The original name of ASC was ST Corps, Supplies and Transport Corps. Then it was got refined as Army Service Corps because it involves more than supplies and transport, right? We have certain other services like training of clerks earlier was with us, and you have the transport varying from the animal transport in the forward areas to the air transport, like what goes from Chandigarh to Ladakh and likewise in the eastern sector. So the entire gamut of transport is with the Army Service Corps. The second part they do is supplies. All supplies except ammunition and vehicles is done by the ASC. So you provision dry ration, you do local contracts for fresh ration, you procure the entire gamut of oils and lubricants, either from organizations like Indian Oil, which are public sector undertaking, but that is our first place of purchase, and or some from the corporate entities, which is lubricants and hygiene chemicals and all. So all these multiple items which sustain an Indian army or to sustain any army, that's the role which ASC plays.
Okay. Sir, ASC मोर लेस पूरा बैकबोन ही है फौज का, क्योंकि अगर सप्लाई नहीं रहेगा तो फौजी आगे लड़ेगा कैसे? There's a famous saying you were telling me off record about Napoleon.
So, supply chain and logistics forms the backbone of any organization. even in the corporate world. So, like Napoleon said, army marches on its stomach, right? So that is one saying. And if you see in the previous wars, whether it is the Second World War, the Korean War, the wars were won by combat and good logistics. But poor logistics can make you lose wars. The Korean campaign, as the armies moved away from the logistic bases, they started petering out and they would recoil back. And as they reached close to their bases, they got into offensive. The Russo-German campaign, the Germans attacked Russia, and it was the long logistic supply lines, bad weather winters that they got caught up outside
Stalingrad.
Moscow and
Stalingrad,
right?
right.
So the whole Second World War's future changed thereafter because they could buy time and this thing. Then you look at the positive side. In 1971, March 1971, when the large number of lakhs of refugees who came into India from East Pakistan, the current Bangladesh, Mrs. Gandhi, in a cabinet meeting, called the then Chief of Army Staff, Field Marshal, later Field Marshal, that time General SHFJ Manekshaw, and she said in the month of April, March-April 71, I want you to attack East Pakistan immediately. So General Manekshaw went with us to Nigeria to play polo. He was the mentor with us. So this story he told us himself. So he says, Mrs. Prime Minister, all that I can assure you is a defeat at this juncture. He says, are you mad? What are you telling? He said, we can't attack at this side because there are too many negatives strategically and other. So the defense minister was Mr. Jagjeevan Ram and Swaran Singh was the foreign minister. So they said, Sam, madam is telling, why don't you agree? And he said, no, I can't agree. So as they were walking out, she was very fond of the chief and she called him back. And he came back and he said, Mrs. Prime Minister, do you want me to resign on health grounds or any other ground? He says, don't be silly. Tell me the reason. He said, the reason that you're, alone. He said, the reason is that we are not logistically poised for East. Our entire preparation is for West Pakistan. And that is very for this 65 war, right? And a major punch of Pakistan armed forces in the Western sector. And he said, in case we attack now in the month of April, end of April, May, there are heavy rains, all rivers are in spate. And he said, by the time we take off, our tanks will be stuck in this. And she says, I understand that. And you tell me when to, so March, April to December. Now, all the logistic institutions were shifted towards East. Preparations were made, more production of ammunition and everything went. So it was the logistics which gave India an edge to have a lightning campaign of 14 days to split Pakistan into two and create a new nation called Bangladesh, despite the 7th Fleet coming in the Bay of Bengal. So that is what logistics and supply chain does for the armed forces in combat and during war.
Speaking of combat, sir, okay, very, very fairly put that, okay, we are the ASC is the backbone for any armed forces in the world, not just the Indian Army. Now, speaking about combat, does ASC troops and officers cease combat?
See, you must remember, while your basic role is to ensure that you support the fighting arms in terms of logistics and supply chain. But at the same time, the way Indian Army operates, everybody has a role going into combat, fighting and killing and be prepared to get killed or coming out of it alive is a basic job. Like Indian Army, ASC has probably upward of 5,000 or 6,000 casualties primarily during the First World War.
Okay.
A lot of animal transport boys, when you see the India Gate, their names are written on that.
Yes.
The First World War has a very big number. Then all Rashtriya Rifle battalions have one mechanical transport platoon, which is manned by all Jawans of ASC. Every ASC officer goes for a varying period of infantry attachment. And it is the young officers who fight in combat. As you go up, you have more directional roles. But when you are young, that is when you come into combat, leading men directly. So ASC officers do this tenure as infantry attachment, which used to be 3 years. Now I think is 1.5 years, 2 years. That is done all in the field area, counterinsurgency or the line of control or high altitude. Then Rashtriya Rifle battalions have an officer per battalion. He is from ASC. Okay. He invariably being young and Joshila. And so maximum awards nowadays, very large number of awards are coming in the way of ASC officers who are in combat. And it's only when you go to combat that you understand the pain of the fighting soldiers, and you can do much more justice to your job when you come in higher positions. So if you see in Kargil war, there are 7 ASC officers who are awarded, primarily most of them posthumously. There's Captain Kangaroos. He is from Nagaland. He got the Mahavir Chakra. Then you have Captain Thapar. Vijayan Thapar, Hanifuddin. And there are 7 officers like this who got awarded. And leave the combat part, even if you see that famous picture of an Indian oil tanker getting bombed while trying to get past Dras, the logistics involves as much nowadays with no fronts in the war. You saw in Op Sindhu.
Correct.
Right? The threat to logistic installation is probably more because it gives them higher dividends. But there is no way to stop any supply chain during combat. In fact, it's more critical. So that sight of that Indian oil tanker being hit in the thick of combat highlights the role of ASC both in the combat role and in the combat support role.
Especially that picture reminded me of how Pakistani troop, which is supported by Northern Infantry, they were cutting off our National Highway 1A. They were cutting off our supply route.
That was the whole purpose, the strategic aim of Musharraf was the chief that time, was to cut off Ladakh. Because Zojila Pass is a sole lifeline.
Correct.
And all these, the winter stocking is done during the months of end April to May, June. And during the winter, the aim was to cut off Ladakh and thereby thinking that we'll be able to annihilate it. But it is the Indian Armed Forces and Indian Army, which I think did a job much faster than expected to evict them.
No, after listening this from you, what I've realized is they were, of course, they were targeting the area. They were trying to capture the area and cutting off this. That's a strategical, tactical approach that they were having. But the most tactical approach I feel after learning this from you is that they were cutting more on the supply fronts more.
Obviously, it gives you bigger dividends now. There was an ammunition dump which caught fire.
Yes.
Remember? See, if I can choke there's a Chinese thinking Mao or somebody, or Sandhu, I think, who says winning the battle without fighting.
That's Sandhu.
Right. So in case you can choke the enemy by destroying his ammunition, by destroying his supplies, you don't need to fight a war. The troops morale will be low, they'll be choked, they don't have ammunition to fight, they don't have ration to survive on. And these are 2 important things for a soldier during war.
Sir, going back to your tenure, which year did you got commissioned?
December 78.
Lovely. So, you must have had a dining in.
Yeah.
Right. So, this is on the lighter note that I'm asking you. What was it like? Like, there's always a tradition in the army is what I've understood. What is a dine-in ceremony in an ASC unit?
I was dined in initially into an infantry battalion.
Oh, okay.
Because you do 1 year of attachment.
Yes.
And that battalion was that time located in Gwalior. Later we moved to Arunachal Pradesh, Tanga Valley and that area. So dining is always a social experience, and they try to, make sure that if you are the kind who's having a drink, then they make sure that they look after you very well, like Indian hospitality. So it's good fun. And It's just that over the years now things have changed. Everyone realizes that that's not the primary way of looking after.
Well, आपने सर काफी सटल तरीके से इसका मतलब जवाब
नहीं
दिया
अभी
है.
मैं नहीं ये वैसे तो ये दाढ़ी मेरी धूप में सफेद हुई है, वैसी समझदारी से नहीं है, बट यू डू लर्न एज यू ग्रो that the concept of looking after has to change. And I think the modern generation is changing, yeah.
I mean, that shows the true leadership also at the same time.
Correct.
Sir, coming back to our AC as a core, AC has been part of Op Avan, Vijay, Parakram everywhere. Where do you think AC must have played the most challenging role, considering we barely had transportation system during 71 wars. Is what I've learned from people while I was doing my research, that we literally stopped the civilian trucks. We liaisoned with the army and then we took them with us to Jaisalmer sector or other sector. So it has evolved over a period of time. So and you commissioned in 78. So from then, since then till about your retirement, could you tell me about the evolvement, kind of equipments that we have bought, or was it like in-house equipment that Indians we only made, like Tata made it? So can you give a...
So I'll tell you conceptually, like I said, it was the armed forces which taught logistics to the industry, right? As means of information evolved, as the infrastructure improved, and as the population grew, and you could not have that much a role of army in terms of society as you went by, the armed forces changed as well. I know I was a second lieutenant when this concept of civil hired transport came in. And we used to be given funds. And people, the headquarters used to say, spend this money. People were so used to going in the army transport, the funds used to be surrendered.
Oh.
And as I grew up in the service, then people are saying, give us more funds. Because they found it convenient, instead of using an army driver and army co-driver and a protection, you load the vehicle here and tell him deliver there and these are the documents. So that is on the transport front. Imagine when I was a young officer, I was posted in NIFA from Misamari. We used to get into a convoy. We didn't even have officers' buses. We used to sit into a 3-ton, and it took about 4 days to reach, Tawang, place like Tawang, 4 or 5 days, right? There'll be convoy, there'll be halts, and to cover 125 kilometers, they'll take about 12 hours or something like that. Whereas now, from Tezpur instead of Misamari, which is another 20-30 kilometers, they go in 2 days to Tawang maximum. Otherwise, just because of the altitude effect. Otherwise, I went there later on from second lieutenant. Then when I was the head of ASC, I thought I must go and see the same area. So then I went in an Innova car. Right, your movement is much faster, and because you're outsourcing. So outsourcing is one thing which has come about. And earlier, since there was lack of infrastructure, you had higher reserves. You don't want to fail. The armed forces work on the concept of just in case. Just in case I have more troops. Just in case this bridge breaks. I can't fail in logistics. And to our credit, Indian Army has never been let down because of logistics. Okay, it could be in failure, it could be whatever. So with the improved infrastructure, now you're holding less and less stocks as reserves because you're confident of having this chain maintain itself. Yeah.
Okay. General साहब, मुझे आप ये बताइए, Siachen is one of the very peak sector, and ठीक है, supply करना within the peace area it's easy. Truck load करा, train load करी, आप ले गए. Going up till Siachen, sending food over there, quality, quantity, reserves. How does an ASC officer manages that?
Leadership is all about identifying criticality. And leaders, either physically or mentally, have to focus their energy on that. I'll give you an example. As a Director General here, we are feeding about 12 lakh army and a bit of Air Force and others, right? I was concerned primarily about Siachen and forward areas. My major chunk of say 50% of our energy will be focused on not failing in the field area, forward areas, right? So we have systems in terms of the reserves we hold, the supply chain we make, and additional rations we give, and the discretion we give to the formations in the field areas, so that the morale of the troops in these areas, there is no room for failure. And we've never failed. We never failed. There's a system of reserves at each level. There is. It doesn't mean that it moves from chain to chain, but we have a very versatile system where sitting in Delhi, we say, okay, send this much to Pathankot, send this much to Misamari, Guwahati, or whatever, so that it is within easy reach. We call it that there is no room for logistic pause. And no way should the troops be looking over their shoulder for supplies to reach. So there are systems, and our energy goes to the critical areas. I'm not so concerned about Delhi, Meerut, or Jaipur. That will happen on its own. Somebody down below will take care. But one Jawan not being happy in those areas where they are committed day and night, 365 days, there is no room for failure. So we have systems.
Sir, as a civilian, I've been to Leh Ladakh, and you have to take permissions and everything, and you don't get much permission during the winter season to cross Nathula Pass or Zojila Pass. But Fauji movements are there, of course. It's about the security of the nation. But it has always been, I've been always been intrigued about the fact who opens the pass, how does it really work? Does ASC plays any role in opening such passes, or is it like the normal unit which is based over there and they do it?
So, see, opening of passes is the job of Border Roads Organization.
Okay.
Right? It's the engineering task. AC has no role. But yes, moment the passes close, we start preparing for our next AWS, they call it Advanced Winter Stocking.
Okay.
So during the road open period, the troops are there. Troops keep changing also, by the way, by air, right? So, and in high altitude area, you can't keep troops, Siachen and all, every 3 months, the men have to come down because it takes a very heavy toll on your body. So troops are changing, but their needs are still there, right? Logistic needs are there. So carrying logistics by air will be extremely expensive. However, even in winters, effort is made to send as much fresh rations as possible because people die for eating fresh ration. This fancy packed food is good in Delhi for a while because it's interesting. But when you have to rely on it, any processed food is always tough. Though most of the food which we have as for winter stocking is supposed to be with minimum or no preservatives, right? So the stocking is done during the road open period, and the planning for that goes on right at Delhi and say Calcutta and Udhampur and Lucknow, wherever they are affected. Their demands come much earlier. Their percentage is planned. Then you also plan within the road open period, which is the stock, which is the item which can last longer. They are sent in April, May. There's something which has a shorter life. They are sent towards the end, say August, September. Right? So a lot of detailed planning goes. And while the mass movement from the hinterland to rail heads will go in a train, say entire train of sugar.
Oh.
Right? From there, you go in bigger trucks to places up to which they can go. Then there's another transfer point. Then it will go into smaller trucks. Then at another place where the battalion's base is, it will be converted into load to be picked up by ponies and mules of ASC. And at certain posts, which are really in altitude, they'll go by porters. And in the case of places like Siachen, it is at times helicopter lifted towards the last leg. So, and with thin air over there, the helicopter can hardly carry equivalent of, 75 to 100 kgs.
I think there is a movie called Shaurya. Mm-hmm. While you were when you mentioned helicopter, it reminded me of that. In that movie Shaurya, this actor actually talks about the ahmiyat of a coffee at that altitude.
Yes, yes.
So
yes.
very very well put that way, that how does a coffee reaches from there until somebody's table over there.
That place you are authorized a lot of fancy stuff like chocolates and others. But the only thing is your body doesn't, I mean, you are supposed to take more calories. But it is such a difficult to place that people can't eat. I've heard that, chocolates and cheese and other things are
People
lying.
don't eat much over there,
They
even if
can't-
it's abundance, if it's
No,
if
but
it's there, they don't
They are
eat it.
advised to eat. If you don't eat, you lose weight, you lose muscle.
Yes,
And,
and that altitude, when you are at when the altitude starts, the right moment Siachen and you reaches -40, -50, that's where everything is frozen only.
Yeah.
Right. You've spoken about the challenges, you've spoken about the combats. Tell me something about your experience as a combatant. Being an ASC officer, you were attached with RR and Assam Rifles as well. So, what is the kind of operations you must have seen while you were attached with them?
So, basically, like I said, the very first year of my service, I was in a high altitude area, Arunachal, right? So it gives you, I think there was no really physical combat, but it was a lot of tough areas to cover. And, I loved trekking, what somebody will call a trekking. And here we used to call it patrolling. And I used to volunteer, right? So I enjoyed that as an adventure. And then I had the privilege of serving with the Assam Rifles and Rashtra Rifles, which were both in insurgency, in the western side and in the northeast. So insurgency always looks very calm, quiet and interesting until something happens. So it is only when there's an ambush or there is a raid or something that things come about. So there were experiences in RR where there were encounters amongst the militants and the army. I was in staff. I was a DAQMG in a RR sector headquarters, and invariably I used to accompany the commander to all these places. It is interesting, but it all looks very quiet, very nice on the face till something happens, and then the encounter goes on. Yeah.
Okay. Sir, what is a day of a ASC convoy look like? So there was a situation in the valley long back when there's a convoy movement. The civilian traffic used to stop and the convoy used to move. But then after political interventions and all, the civilian cars also start coming in, and we happen to see a Pulwama attack because it has resulted to that more or less. So how does an ASC convoy functions, or what's a day like for a convoy?
So, see, India is a functional democracy, right? We cannot live. I went to Myanmar, and Myanmar on a crossing, when our convoy, we went from NDC course, convoy was going, everyone stopped peacefully, right? There's a military janta, right? Probably, I don't know, there must be something in Pakistan and other countries. But in India, there is media, there are human rights, there are civilian rights, citizens ask for their own rights. So as a result, maybe many years back, you could sanitize the area for the army convoys to move, to control traffic and to ensure security. But over a period of time, you have to start taking risks of giving citizens their right vis-a-vis the security of the armed forces and others. But speaking the day in the life of a convoy, it's a very intricate job if you look at it. You have to start preparing a days in advance as to what all do you want to go in that convoy on that day. Say from place like Jammu to Srinagar, or say Dimapur to Imphal. So you make the entire manifest and list, and that the staff works out how many vehicles will be required. What will be the protection? If it is an insurgency area, you will have the road opening parties, sanitizing the whole area, right from the beginning to the end. And then you select drivers. Who are the drivers who are going to be in leading vehicles? Who are the drivers who are going to be fitted into the convoy? And at times, to cover a very short distance, they have to cover many hours because convoy discipline has to be maintained, convoy security has to be maintained, rest to the drivers and the halts on the way. So it's a detailed convoy order which goes into, and that is how it is executed.
Sir, I have a very personal question to ask here. I've seen moving around Delhi Cant area or any other Cant area, I see couple of trucks, not like a long convoy that I have seen in Leh Ladakh. Like goes miles and miles. There's a convoy movement. In the smaller setup, I've seen a red flag on the top right corner or left corner. So when I was in NCC, we used red flag while we were doing a firing. That okay, you place a red flag here. There's a sentry post there, and then you go in and then you fire. But why is there a red flag? And most of the trucks I never saw. Only few trucks I've seen red flags. So any specific reason to it?
So red flag is the first truck which shows that this is the beginning of the convoy.
Okay.
And the green flag in the end which shows that the convoy is now ended.
Okay.
And if there are some explosives or dangerous stores in between, you might put a red flag. That is normally the significance.
Because I've sort of always used to think that
Green
why is
was
the red
to
flag
show
on this
that
and not on
this is the last vehicle of the convoy.
Okay. Just like how you demarcate an aircraft red and the green, but that just talks about the position. But here we have a convoy position. Yeah. Great. How did army come about on buying trucks from Russia? We have some left-handed trucks as well, left driving vehicle trucks as well. How come we started procuring them?
So, see, most of Indian equipment is of Russian origin. You are talking about these Tatras, right? These are prime movers to move tank transporters because they are multiple axles. Now, I think it's being made for a long time in India, and I'm surprised how we did not bother to change it to right-hand drive. Now, I think Tatas and others are making which are driven on the right side, right-hand drive.
Right-hand driven. Sir, you being a top brass officer in the army, holding a position of lieutenant general, over a period of time you've grown in the army. You've been growing in the army since you were in class 9 from Sainik school. You've legit have seen Forge and the Forge ke taur tarike growing up as well. Now my question is, where I'm coming from is, how do you think ASC has evolved? And now we're sitting in 2025. People are talking about drones. What is the future supply chain that you're looking at from an ASC perspective or from a leadership perspective in the army?
So, firstly, like you use the word evolved, right? The combat scenario as time goes by is changing faster than it is even being thought of. Like if you talk about IT, by the time you introduce an equipment, it is obsolete, right? Everything earlier, the generation used to be 25 years. Now it is less than 10 years. There's the difference. We have two sons. They're 10 years apart. The difference in the second one and the first one, the way they were brought up and the way their attitude is different because he's from the next generation, right? So warfare is now evolving faster, and in fact, it is astonishing to see how fast it is changing. You see the Armenia-Azerbaijan war, you saw the current Israel, Palestine, then Israel, Iran, America attacking Iran, Ukraine, Russia. We used to talk about short duration wars. Now there's been almost 3 years that war is going on. And we have this short duration 4-day conflict between India and Pakistan. So those who don't change, and Indian Army, I think one feels very proud to be, we are futuristic thinking despite having limited resources. We are a very different country. We are a big country. We have big population. We have a lot of resources. But then we are a democracy where the resources also have to go towards development. It is not Pakistan which can spend everything on military and then, the citizens just die. So within the limitation of resources, Indian Armed Forces, including ASC, evolve to economize and yet be effective. So whether it is the transportation, whether it is the food, and we have a lot of thought process which goes into we have a lot of training institutions, we have a lot of think tanks, and we have a lot of planning directorates which talk about how to economize and yet be relevant and be able to do its job. So ASC has been evolving, like I said, whether it is outsourcing, whether it is, procuring things with less reserves, right? Whether it is reducing the number of grades of lubricants, whether it is reducing the numbers of grade of main fuels, so that storage, warehousing, and in fact, ASC prides itself that in the 1970s, earlier we used to have petroleum depots, one in Delhi, one in Mathura, one in Barabanki or something, holding reserves of fuel. And if you hold reserves, how do you use it? Right? So we signed an agreement with Indian Oil Corporation. Now it is with all public sector oil companies. Now they hold the reserves because civil mein they are using it. They said, sir, your requirement is just a fraction of our holding. So we now tell them, you will hold 1000 KL of this here. You will have 2000 of KL thing, this 500 KL, depending on our needs. So we have outsourced the warehousing to them, for which we pay them some minimal amount, and which is much more economical. So evolution of army, and now the drones, they're planning to replace AT. Wherever the road, there's a thing called all-terrain vehicles which might come. So we are cautious, but it's happening.
So I have two supplements to it now. One is definitely you've touched upon the AT. But before I get on to that particular conversation, I want to ask how the procurement works. Since you mentioned that corporate logistics and for logistics, there's a procurement team in corporates as well. There's a certain process to it. And how does procurement works in the army?
So in the case of army, there are two types of procurement. One is capital, where you buy tanks, aircraft, helicopters, vehicles, which is dealt with by one set of people. I wasn't involved that, except we were involved to do the policy making for procurement of vehicles.
Okay.
Because we look after the transfer of Indian Army, so we were the ones to do the trials, to give a policy as to procurement of vehicle. Procurement is done by someone. My main charter as Director General of ASC was to procure consumables, revenue, sustenance. So that is fuel oil lubricants. We mainly procured from public sector companies which are on a negotiated contract rate, because it doesn't make so much of a difference, because after all it is going to your own government. Then wherever there are items which are locally required, we do local contracts which are done not at the level of Delhi, maybe done at the level of commands and corps. So they have a number of people who are registered there who meet those requirements. So there is a whole system. And if that also fails, then there's a local purchase. Then, so that troops don't suffer, neither the vehicle equipment nor the men, and those things are procured locally. So there's a well-oiled machine which works.
There have been chatters before also, recently also it started as to that, we won't be using, the Forge won't be using animal transport anymore, and probably we'll be using drones even to carry a casualty or to supply anything. What do you think of that? Do you have any takes?
So, see, what will happen is roads have improved. Places where there were foot tracks or 80 tracks, now roads have come up. Better infrastructure has come up. So obviously, you have to reduce dependence on AT. Earlier, we used to use even AT to carry artillery ammunition and mortar ammunition. Now you got guns which can go and hit 300 kilometers. For normal guns which used to fire 12 kilometers are fighting 40 kilometers. Why should I carry the ammunition and the guns using AT? So mule artillery AT straightway, thankfully, after a long time. So it is again a part of evolving process. And you will continue to reduce AT as time goes, as the infrastructure improves. There have been talk of drones and all that. I'm sure they must be taking a decision as to how successful it is or not. But in times to come, probably you'll have to aim is to cut the tail. There's a tooth to tail ratio. For every man I cut down in logistics, I have had that many more men fighting. And ultimately, you want more people fighting than looking after the administration. So AT will over a period of time,
Okay,
reduce. But I'm sure the decision makers will make sure that where you need it, they'll keep it.
Sir, apart from managing the ASC, you've been a DGST as well. Um, I've learned that you also have got the doctorate. I've also learned that you are a very avid, not avid, a very good polo player as well. Uh, Growing up from a second lieutenant to a rank of a lieutenant general, that's a journey in itself. Because now second lieutenant rank does not even exist, starts with lieutenant only. So it's a journey itself. How did you manage to balance your academics? You were playing polo. You played internationally as well. You represented army as well internationally. And how did you manage your work, which is your actual role in corporate? What you call it, KPIs and KRAs. So how did you manage all
So
three?
when I was in Indian Military Academy, you are required to give your choices what you want to join when you're passing out. So I gave my choices Armored Corps, Infantry, ASC.
Okay.
Right. So in the month of November, we came to Delhi to play polo. And my dream was, I'm first generation army officer.
Okay.
I thought all that I'll do in the army is play polo. Right. So when I came here in November, and I was opted for Armored Corps because one of the polo players instructor was
From the armored.
from the Armored Corps. So I opted for his regiment. I came here, I found no Armored Corps chaps playing polo. I told him, I said, sir, there is nobody. And ASC was there. ASC is a polo team.
Okay.
So they came to ask me. They normally, all of us like to look for youngsters who we can recruit and they can have the potential to be part of the team. So they asked me, do you want to join ASC? So I was embarrassed internally that if I tell them it's my third choice and I want to join, they say, I mean, that's not really great idea. So I told them that I will let you know. So I asked Major, that time Major, later Brigadier Dhillon. I said, sir, this is he says, that's your call. So I said, then I'm opting for them. So I went and told them that's my second choice. So that they said, choice doesn't matter. You want to join? So I joined ASC.
Okay.
So I joined it probably with this sole aim of playing polo. That as you go by, and I found that there is more to army. In the beginning, when I was a young officer, I hardly stayed in the unit. I used to come to Delhi, play for 2-3 months, then go to Bombay, then go to Jaipur and all that. But then I found that professionally, when you're doing the courses and all, that even without effort, I would find it very easy because it was a passion. And that is why I talk about passion. I didn't serve the army, I lived army as a way of life. So thereafter, I primarily did the present. And I was the first assistant deputation officer posted to an NDA Khadakwasla.
Okay.
And before going for that, I did my junior command course in which I got instructor grading. So people told me that if you try a little bit, you go for staff college. That is the first filter. So I played, the commandant there was kind. He got me extension. I stayed there for 3.5 years, which is very rare. So I played polo and last few months I said, let me do staff college. I did staff college. So then you come into this mainstream of professional appointments. So thereafter, I played only as a hobby when I could spare myself from that side against my leave. So no boss minds you if you're not absenting yourself from work. If you tell them, please deduct that much from my leave. So I played on, except once when I was posted to Delhi, then I could be posted here and play. So then it carried it as a hobby. And I had read in Boring, there's a book by Mr. Boring, I don't know his first name, which is the military psychology. So he tells one thing which I really found very effective was a human being can keep one thing prime in his mind. If you want to do very well in sports and very well in studies, you will fail in both. But if you decide at this stage of my career, I want to do sports only, I will do studies, but it's okay. If there is a clash, I will go well. You'll do well there. I did well there. I was posted in India. I left my staff college entrance exam. Next, I said no.
You left your staff college entrance
exam, compulsory chance. I said I can do it in next 2 chances. So if you can do it, you get 3 chances. So first one, I said no. Because my job is do this. So I played polo, I did everything. I did well that year. Next year, people said, why didn't you play? I said, no, I've decided now this. So I did that and I got into that. So it was following that. And just now I read a book, The One Thing. And this is advocated by a lot of corporates. He says you have to select one thing which will make a lot of other things to happen. So I think I was ahead of time. So I kept doing this thereafter. And after my staff college and all, the only thing was career. Playing was, if it comes your way, fine. If it doesn't matter, then I picked up golf and other sports so to keep myself busy. So so my son wanted to become a professional golfer. I said, your golf will continue only till you are good in studies. The day you show drop in your performance in studies, your golf set is out. So it is good that he played till his class 11. And then he did very well in his class 12 and he took on a normal career, but he's played sports. So you can balance both if you have your mind at the correct place.
This reminded me of Major Dhyan Chand, the Indian hockey player who represented India in German Olympics game.
Correct.
And I think 10 goals is what we had placed against. I don't remember which country it was, but it was said, I think it was said by the Hitler himself that he wanted to meet Major Dhyan Chand. He said, oh, you should join the German forces side. They're like, no. But he was like, you should join the German forces and we will treat you well. But no, I'm still an Indian, no matter this is part of British. So the place where I'm coming from is how Army and how ASC they're in the picture. We are excelling a lot in sports right now. So you want to tell me something about that?
So, there's one Colonel Balbir Singh. He played for Indian hockey team. He was a medal winner in various games. Brigadier Harcharan Singh was part of Indian hockey team. In polo, we have a lot of people who played for the country, for the army. And I was looking after these sports. So we have a tradition of sports. There was a time when I was once in Bombay. So there were 3 teams, the ASC basketball team, ASC hockey team and ASC polo team. All 3 were playing in Bombay. So our basketball team used to be here, our polo team used to be here, and hockey team used to be in Jalandhar that time. So we have a tradition of sports. And even in the Indian hockey, there's another boy from the south, Sunil. He was from ASC. So we've had our share because services as it is contribute immensely. Most of these kids, these boys' ranks don't show up when they are shown as part of Indian team. So ASC has had the tradition of excelling in sports. So across the spectrum, primarily hockey, basketball, polo, equestrian, we've had people with the Arjuna awardees in all these sports. So traditionally, and I was in charge of sports once, then I revived the ASC polo and equestrian again by right-sizing the people. So we have a tradition and we nurture the talent. We try and recruit good boys and we are continuing to have that.
So you've been at a leadership position in the army, being a lieutenant general, and reaching there is itself it's an honor and it's a challenge and a journey as well. While you were growing in the army hierarchically, things have evolved. You've spoken about it. But when you reach to a place where you can actually take decisions, what all decisions that you took, which has, key steps, elements that you've taken, which has actually helped troops on the front lines and managing the procurement process or rather any process for that matter, because you're there at the top who's taking decision to improvise certain things which will trickle down till somebody who's a rifleman.
So actually, like we discussed the whole evening, the whole process is evolving, right? There are people before you who've done a lot and it's like a relay race. It's you just carry the baton and you're duty bound to do your bit and you and your team. Firstly, nobody at the top does things himself. It is all done by the team. It is just that you give some direction. And I would always say you are the one who gets the credit for it, but it is a job done by your team. So we had, me and the Quartermaster General of that time, we had identified 3 areas which were pending for a long time for decision making. And we could implement all those 3. That was procurement of certain stuff of the forward areas. It was also procurement of certain items of fresh, which were, like, say, more hygienic than earlier, right? And main thing was that within ASC, the Jawans, because of recruitment pattern, were retiring as sepoys in the 2 trades of mechanical transport and animal transport. That was my first day's first aim, and it took me about 3 months to get appropriate sanction. So these small steps that could be taken by my team during my tenure as their head were extremely satisfying. And we set these goals, and in my very short tenure, we could achieve them. And in my monthly conference, I used to always tell my entire directorate that all that I can tell you is thank you, because you guys are working for much more for me than what I worked for anybody else.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Jal साहब. आपके साथ बात करके काफ़ी कुछ पता लगा एसी के बारे में, challenges, planning, security. The whole motive for me to invite you for this podcast is I want to tell people more about what ASC does. Because we all have heard combat stories, we all have heard what an infantry does, but very few people knows actually what an ASC does. So thank you so much, sir, for being part of this evening with me. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका आने का.
No, it's been a pleasure. I enjoyed being with you, and it was always good to talk about the military with the accomplished person like you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.